What's going on, guys? This is Lior and welcome back to my channel. Now in this video, what I thought I would do is answer some of the most frequently asked questions I get regarding commercial mortgages, LLCs, construction, and partnerships. These are things I kind of just hear over and over again. So I thought I would do one video answering all of these most commonly asked questions. So with that, let's get at it. What's going on, guys? My name's Lior and welcome back to my channel. Now, as I said in this video, I'm going to tackle some of the most frequently asked questions I get about the about my personal business, which is the buy and hold real estate investing strategy. So I'm going to kind of go through. I have a nice list of a bunch of questions that I hear quite a bit. But before I get into that, super quick, guys, if this is your first time on my channel, make sure you smash that subscribe button for me. I put out tons of new videos every single week talking about all about real estate investing, the buy and hold strategy, construction, renovations, project walkthroughs, and so much more. So if that's the kind of content you're looking for, make sure you subscribe to the channel. So with that, let's hop right into some of the questions that I get. I've got a list of some questions I get right over here, so that's why you'll see me looking over. So let's hop right into it and first talk about LLCs. And one of the most common questions I get is, do I need an LLC to purchase my first or next property? And the answer is, it depends, right? So first of all, if you're going to be buying a property using a residential loan, you cannot close with an LLC, right? When you buy when you use residential loans, you have to sign as yourself, right? But when you use commercial loans, right? So whether that's a hard money loan or a commercial mortgage, which we'll talk more about in this video, you do have to use an LLC, right? Now, one of the reasons why I think so many people kind of obsess about this is they kind of read about, liability and protection, etc. And when they realize that if they're going to be using a residential loan, especially if it's like one of their first purchases or something, they kind of get a little bit worried about liability. Now, I'll say this, when I bought my first multifamily, it was under a residential loan, so I closed under my own name. I think a great liability protection under that strategy is just getting an umbrella policy. Obviously, do your own research, talk to your insurance agent to really understand the complexity, to really understand the intricacies of that. But I do think an umbrella policy is a great tool to have, especially if you're going to be buying, investment property under your personal name. But otherwise, if you're going to go through a commercial mortgage, like I said, through like a local bank, a hard money note, or whatever it is, yes, you will have to open an LLC and close under that entity. Now, the next question I get a lot is, how do, I talk a lot about in this channel about how I structure my deals, where I typically have capital partners and all that. And I get this question quite a bit, is how do the other people actually own a part of the property in your structures, right? Like, how does that work with you, right? And if you want to do the same sort of structure, the answer is basically when you close on a project, right? These are all commercial mortgages, right? So I'm closing through an LLC. And what happens is each LLC has its own operating agreement, right? And basically an operating agreement distills all the duties and responsibilities of each single member, right? Especially the person that's providing the money versus the person that's actually executing the project. So all of that is spelled out in this agreement. And the other thing that's spelled out in this agreement is percent ownerships and original capital investments, right? So if you're going to joint venture or partner with someone that maybe is providing the funds for you, and you're going to actually go do the work, then the way you're going to structure it is you're going to put your percent ownership into the operating agreement, as well as your capital contribution versus the joint venture's ownership in the building or in the company which owns the building, and the amount of money they're putting up front, right? That way, everything is disclosed up front. Everyone knows exactly how much they own, how much they've invested, and how much they are due back once there are proceeds to distribute. All right, so next, let's go talk a little bit about construction. I get quite a bit of questions about construction, and especially in terms of financing. So I get a lot of people asking me, how do I actually go about financing construction, right? So let's first talk about if you're gonna buy an investment property under a residential loan, right? Most lenders, when you're going through residential lending, do not offer you combination acquisition and construction loans, right? Those are typically only reserved for commercial mortgages, hard money loans. But I mean, there certainly have been exceptions. I've seen one or two local players in my own marketplace offer a residential loan with a construction portion to it, but it's under very, very specific circumstances. I believe it was a special owner-occupant loan program that was meant to incentivize people buying single families that they're going to live in and renovate them. Long story short, typically you cannot get a bundled construction loan with an acquisition loan when going through residential lending. So if you're going to go down that path, really your main options are going to be finance the construction through cash, right? So you're literally just going to use your own cash that you have left over to finance the renovations. And if not, if you're going to try to get some sort of loan on it, it's going to be very, very hard to get unsecured debt on it, right? Really, the only other way to finance it would be to get something like a loan secured by real estate, or maybe you have a primary residence where you can go get a home equity line of credit on, or something along the lines, right? It's probably going to have to be a secured line of credit, secured by something like real estate, or maybe you have other assets that you can pledge. But otherwise, it's going to be very, very challenging to finance. It's going to be very, very challenging to get that kind of construction loan. But the advantage is when you're going through commercial mortgages, right? Typically, the construction is actually financed into the loan, right? So you'll typically get one loan where you have a specific portion that is meant for the acquisition of the actual property. And then there's going to be a portion of funds that are typically going to be held in an escrow account with your lender that are meant to be for the construction. Now, I'm not going to get super into the detail about how that actually works, but basically the way you need to understand it is those construction funds are not all released to you at once, right? Like I said, they're held in an escrow account. And as you go and do work piecewise, the lender will release the funds piecewise, right? So let's say you're going to go do a full gut rehab of a multifamily, right? So let's say you do step one, which is demoing the property. Boom, you do the demo work. Then the lender comes in, checks on the work that you've done. They sign off on it and say, okay, now we're going to release the fund, a specific portion of the funds, which we designated for the demolition. And then you go do your framing and then your plumbing. And then again, your lender comes back and forth, does the inspections, verifies that you've actually done the work, and then releases those portions of funds designated for framing, plumbing, electrical, and so on. So now let's talk a little bit about commercial loans and who can actually get them and qualify for them. First, let's talk about getting a loan from a local community bank, a commercial mortgage from a local community bank. Most lenders from community banks will not give these loans to rookies or novices, right? Typically, rookies or novices will start by building their resume by going through hard money loans, right? And if you've seen my other videos, you know that hard money loans differentiate themselves from community bank loans in the sense that they're a lot more expensive, right? These hard money loans typically have interest rates of anywhere from 10 to 12, 13%. They typically also have 1 to 2 points in closing costs associated with them as well, right? So the typical path for an investor is they'll start off their career or resume by going through hard money loans. They're more expensive, but they'll kind of build up their track record. And once they have a track record, then eventually they can transition over to start grabbing loans from local community banks. The advantage of community banks is their terms and rates are much, much more attractive. Today I can get a commercial loan from anywhere from 3.5% to 4.5%, with maybe only half a point in closing costs, right? So much, much more attractive debt. But that's why you want to build up that resume so you can actually qualify to get that loan. There's a few other characteristics those lenders will typically look for. There's typically some sort of liquidity requirements they all have that they want to see you having. There's also typically some sort of net worth requirements. Rough rule of thumb is a community bank will want to see your net worth be equivalent to the loan size you're getting for, right? So if you're applying for $1 million loan, ideally you have somewhere around $1 million net worth. So as you can see, there's a lot more criteria to qualify for lending from local community banks, but those sorts of mortgages are much, much more attractive than hard money loans. So obviously the effort is going to be worthwhile. Speaking of lending, and I already kind of talked a little bit about deal structuring. The next question I typically get a lot is, how do I, if I'm going to go through the structure that you're doing, which is, grabbing debt from, let's say, hard money lenders or local community banks, and then maybe partnering with a capital partner or joint venture to fund the money that I need for the deal, how do I actually go about raising that money, right? And this is, again, another one of those things that kind of builds up as you build up your resume, right? You need to start off by doing a couple of projects and showing that you can successfully execute on these kinds of deals, right? So you cannot, as a first-time investor, it's going to be not that you cannot, but it's just going to be very hard for you as a first-time investor to go out there and try to raise some sort of money for your project, right? Because any lender that's going to consider partnering with you and giving you those funds is going to say, well, what kind of confidence do I have that you can actually execute on this deal, right? So that's why it's really important to build up a track record, really show that, hey, I've successfully done these deals in the past. These have been my results. So now the lender can say, okay, like I understand, or the lender or the capital partner, however you want to call them, can say, okay, I understand, you know what you're doing. I have a lot more confidence in your ability to execute on the deal. The other thing you can do too to kind of speed track that process a little bit is actually partner with experienced operators in your marketplace, right? And that's one of the things that I did that kind of helped me speed track a little bit along, right? So instead of kind of trying to do everything on my own, what I did is from day one is I partnered with experienced developers and investors to really, to essentially enhance my resume, right? And I was able to learn from them directly. I was able to see exactly how they operate, how they execute on deals. And that not only helped me from a knowledge perspective, but again, also helped me with a resume building perspective. I was able to leverage a lot of their expertise and deals. And that, again, is something that compounds over time. So the point is, regardless of which path you choose, it's going to probably take you some time. Don't expect to just go in day one on your first project and get a capital partner who's going to fund your deal 100%. It's just very, very unlikely. And not only that, you don't really want to put yourself under that pressure, right? Because you're going to probably make some mistakes as a rookie, as someone that's never done a real estate deal before, or maybe has only done a handful of deals before. So you don't want to put other people's money on the line when you're still not 100% experienced and can really be confident that you can deliver and execute on the project. All right, next let's talk about finding and managing contractors. That's always a very, very big question from folks. And there's no secret sauce, right? I mean, finding contractors, there's, if you search on Bigger Pockets or online, there's a million different tips out there. When I first started, I used those tips, right? I found my first few contractors online on Craigslist. I think I actually connected with one contractor at Home Depot who looked like he was busy and buying a lot of material. I also got a number of referrals from more experienced investors, right? So I kind of there's a lot of different techniques and tips that out there. I kind of experimented with all of them. I don't think there's one that is one way that is better than the other. Today, I certainly will probably try to lean towards getting referrals from investors that I trust and that I know that I'd also do good work. Because typically investors that do good work and have successful businesses have pretty good contractors. But again, that's no guarantee, right? I mean, I've certainly been referred folks that have maybe not, that have turned out to be not amazing, right? So again, no perfect answer. You kind of just got to experiment, figure out what works best for you. And in terms of managing contractors, again, there's, books out there about this. But my number one advice is, at first, I treat the relationship as brand new and I kind of Hawkeye everything, right? So that goes from everything from purchasing materials. When I'm working with a brand new contractor that I don't have any experience with, I prefer to typically pay for materials rather than trusting the contractor to pay for them. I try to negotiate my upfront payments as low as possible, right? A lot of contractors will ask for maybe like 30 to 50% upfront of the 30 to 50% of the total cost of the job upfront. I try to negotiate that down like 20%, 15%, as low as I possibly can get it. But as I develop a relationship with a contractor, I certainly will put more and more faith in him. Typically they see the value in working with someone like myself or yourself if you're doing more and more deals, right? Because the more projects you do, obviously the more work it is for the contractor. So, that those relationships certainly develop over time, but I would say definitely up front when you're first starting out, definitely you want to kind of be a little bit more hawk-eyed, making sure they're doing the work, they're telling you, inspecting the work, and if you feel like they're not pricing you fairly, making sure to get competitive bids to kind of gut check everything and make sure they're not taking advantage of you. And finally, the last topic I'm going to cover that I get asked quite a bit is what are my thoughts on partnerships and what should you be on the lookout for? And look, I think partnerships are an incredible tool. I've built my business on partnerships. I will say though, my very first partnership turned out to be quite horrible. So I've seen the worst of it. I've also seen the best of it, right? And the first thing I'd say about looking for partners is you obviously want to look for different strengths, right? There's no sense in aligning with someone that's good at what you are. I'm sure you've probably heard of this tip, but that's incredibly important for real estate. So for example, myself, I am very good at marketing and deal finding. I'm also very good at underwriting and deal structuring. I'm very good at management, but I'm not necessarily as good at construction management and kind of dealing with that whole aspect, right? That's probably my personal weakness. My partner is definitely way better at those aspects than I'm not. So kind of find people that have different strengths, right? That's definitely tip number one. And the second tip is making sure you're aligned about your goals, vision, and moral conduct, right? And with goals and vision, I think that's really important, right? Because you don't want to necessarily partner with someone who has a different outline, who has a completely different vision of the future than you do, right? So for example, if you're trying to get into the buy and hold strategy, it might not necessarily make sense to partner with someone on a deal that's maybe only mainly a flipper, right? Or mainly a wholesaler, and they're kind of trying to dabble in buy and holds, right? You kind of want to align with, if you're going to really have a successful partnership, you want someone who believes in your strategy and believes in your outlook, right? So if you're going to be a buy and hold guy and someone that's going to be looking to play a 5 to 10 year game, right? Where you're okay sitting on properties long term because you believe in your marketplaces, that's fine. And you want to find someone that has that same vision, right? Because partnering with a buy and hold guy, but someone who wants to exit in 2 to 3 years is again going to be kind of a misalignment of interest and is not necessarily going to produce the best results for you, right? So really understanding each other's outlines and visions for the future, I'd say 5 to 10 year visions is a fantastic place to start, is going to be absolutely important. And of course, the last component, which I mentioned, is moral conduct. Again, at the end of the day, business is, I believe, is very one-to-one. And really just like person to person, right? And if you're not going to be aligned in terms of moral conduct and how you operate ethically, I think you're just going to have issues, right? So make sure you're aligned with someone that is ethically operates the way you want to operate, does everything the way you want your business to look, because anything that, because if those are misaligned, that can definitely cause a lot of damage to your business and your reputation, which at the end of the day is critical in the real estate industry. So I know I know I kind of went through a lot of different topics and answered a lot of different questions. Hopefully that's helpful, guys. Of course, if you have any other questions, just put them in the comments below and I will definitely help you out.